which I'm going to store in this object variable, my URL. So given now that I have one of these NS URL objects created from a URL, I can actually read the entire contents at that URL using NS strings, and this is an NS string method. As you can tell, I sent it to the NS string class. So the method is string with contents of URL. It's really that easy, and I specify an NS URL object. I specify an encoding, and you have to be careful here because if I use NS UTF-8 encoding, string encoding, and the website isn't encoded with that, it's not going to work. I'm going to get null back, and you don't know in advance, unfortunately, what the encoding is. So you can experiment. Most of the time, this seems to work. NS ASCII string encoding. If that doesn't work, try the NS UTF-8 string encoding instead. So I'm going to use NS ASCII encoding here. I'm not going to take the error back at all. I'm not even checking for an error here, as you can see. So not very good defensive coding here, but that's okay. So I get back a string, and it's actually going to read the whole web page here that's stored at this URL, and it's going to store it in this NS string variable called my page, and I'm just going to print out my page using NSLog, and I'm going to go to the console and run this. Waiting for it to compile. And here we go. Here's the actual HTML from that website. All right, so not too exciting, but this actually read that page, the web page, from my website, classroomm.com. You can see it starts up here. This is the actual beginning of the HTML. Right here's the first line of that output. And you can see I got all my HTML code here. Of course, I could have a text file. I could have some other meaningful file stored at a web address, and I could read its contents. This is just showing you a simple example. Let's see what happens if I use the wrong encoding here. If I used UTF-8 string encoding instead, and I run this program, you see it doesn't work. I get a null object back. So once again, use NS ASCII encoding as your first guess here if you're reading a URL, and that'll give you most of the time the results you're looking for, which in this case, once again, is just HTML, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any data you're storing on the internet. You can go ahead and read that into your program very easily with just a few lines of code. So it is actually very, very nice and easy to work with this stuff in your program. Okay, so that was a very quick introduction to the NSURL class, which is quicker than actually is in the text, which is none. I don't even have an example in the text. I'll be putting that in the next edition. The last thing I wanted to talk about here, some miscellaneous stuff. There's an NS process info class. There's a couple of program examples. There's actually program 16.6, which shows how NS process info can be used. In that example, the NS if you send the process info message to the NS process info class, you get back this NS process info object, and then you can send all sorts of messages to that object to ask questions about the process. For example, you can ask it what the process name is, what the operating system name is, what the operating system version is. If you wrote a command line argument program that's passed to main in that argc and argv, you can actually more elegantly get access to those arguments by sending the arguments message to that NS process info object and get back those command line arguments as actually objects for processing. And there are a couple examples in the text that show you how to actually do that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is there's a function called NS search path for directories and domains, which allows you to find things like, well, what's the user's document directory, or what's some of the other standard directories, what's their library directory, what's their system directory. If you need to get access to particular directories on a system or or relative to a user, you can use this function. And I would direct you to the NS search path directory to look that up in your documentation to get a list of all the things you could look for. Here's how, for example, I could find the document directory. I can use the NS search path for directories and domains, give it the argument NS document directory, just plug in this NS user domain mask, and yes, I'll get back an array of paths. If the count in that array is greater than 0, it means something was filled into that NS array object, in which case if I get the first object out of that array, I actually get, and it might seem like a lot of work here, but I actually get a path to the document directory for that documents directory for that particular user. So once again, just something I wanted to leave you with at the end of this class. And that's it. I actually did pretty good here, 7:16. Not bad, at least my time. So that's it for today's discussion. I will be posting, as I mentioned, an assignment after the class. It's not up yet. You should have received these handouts in your email by now. And let me just see if there's any questions, and then we'll finish up for today. Let me just locate my questions window. Not there. Not there. There it is. Okay, so okay, doesn't look like too many questions. No, Lee, there aren't major differences in file handling on the iPhone. You work with Foundation. You open up a file. You can read and write to that file. You're limited in what you have access to. You're working in a container on the iPhone, however, so you don't get access to the entire file system like you would if you're writing a COCO application. What chapters will we cover in the next class? Mark, I think we're covering copying objects, if I'm not mistaken, in the next class. I don't know if that's going to take up the full lecture, though. I don't know if I'm going to spend an hour and 15 minutes on copying objects, so I may also go into archiving. I don't remember if copying and archiving were scheduled for one class or not, so I have to actually check that. Can you use methods to read an XML file? Yes, there are methods actually for reading and parsing XML files, Ben, which I don't really have time to go into in this class. Maybe it's something I can cover if you can add as a suggestion, and if I have time, I can actually do a little prep work for you to cover how to parse XML data if that's what you're interested in. Linda, excuse me. Linda wants to know what the M in Classroom M stands for. That stands for mobile. The idea is we have some ideas for some mobile applications of our courseware, which we haven't gotten around to actually doing yet. And Ben, certainly you can use those methods that I mentioned to read XML data. There's also methods that allow you to actually parse XML data. If the XML data is just in a regular file, certainly you can just go ahead and read that file using the techniques that I mentioned.